We request everyone to settle down, please, so we can start the next session. Satyaji. Would request the people to just move to the side so that the people in the front rows can see the stage. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to start the last session at the Eastgate Column Lawns for this season of the Kolkata Lit Meet. And here we have Radhika Iyengar and Manoj Mohanka. And the session would be called Fire on the Ganges, where Radhika Iyengar discusses her book on the dorms of the Benares with Manoj Mohanka. So let me introduce Radhika Iyengar first. Radhika Iyengar is an award-winning journalist based in Mumbai who writes on arts and culture, marginalized communities, history and gender. Her debut non-fiction novel is titled Fire on the Ganges, Life Among the Dead in the Benares. She is a graduate of Columbia University and has won the Red Ink Award for Excellence in Indian Journalism in the year 2018 and has also been the recipient of the Charles Wallace India Trust Fellowship, the Sanskriti Prabha Dutt Fellowship, and Sangam House Residency. Her work has been published in Al Jazeera, Christian Science Monitor, Atlas Obscura, Netflix, Hyperallergic, Vogue in India, Condé Nast Traveler India, Platform Magazine, Open Magazine, Scroll.in, and Goya Journal. And these are amongst many other famous publications. So if you could just give her a round of applause, please, and welcome her here. Speaking with her would be Mr. Manoj Mohanka, who is a businessman but far more interested in affairs of the state and the state of affairs. He serves on the board of several corporations both in India and abroad across genres. In all these companies, he has played a variety of roles including formulating business strategy, budding management teams, raising capital and negotiating foreign collaborations and IPOs. He is also keen on sports and has been the president of Calcutta's Racquet Club, which is India's oldest Scotch club. In addition, he runs a charitable trust for the education of Muslim girl children. If we could have a round of applause for him as well, and I'll open the floor on to them. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome on a chilly evening. Winter's finally come to Kolkata. I had forewarned Radhika on the dress code, so I'm glad you're well clad. She comes from Bombay, and the format that we are following this evening, Radhika will do a brief presentation, a PowerPoint, to give us a fix on the geography and the exact location. And then we'll get into a conversation with her and make it as interactive as possible. So over to you, Radhika.
Thank you so much, Manoj, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. It's such a privilege. So without further ado, I will start my presentation. So I wanted to, of course, start with a photograph of Benares. When we think of Benares, we think of the peacefully flowing Ganges. And we think of temples, and we think of priests, and we think of the gullies. So Benares has a deep religious significance in Hindu society, in our public consciousness. But, and it also it gives a sense of calm and serenity. But today I want to show you a different face of Benares. This is Manikarnika Ghat, and also known as Mahashamshan Ghat. It is believed that if a Hindu is cremated here, then the deceased soul receives moksha. And they can only receive moksha by if their body is cremated by sacred fire, which has been burning for centuries, and that sacred fire is in the sole ownership of a community called the Domes, that are corpse burners. So this is Manikarnika Ghat. As you can see, that there are many people, and in the background there are buffaloes in the water. There's a boat with firewood. In the foreground, towards the left side corner, lower left side corner, there are corpses, and they are covered by this orange fabric, which is known as coffin, or it's also called the shroud. And this coffin or shroud comes in various colors of yellow, golden, red, and orange. And I'll tell you the significance of this coffin as well later on. But the corpses come draped with this coffin when they're delivered at Manikarnika Ghat. So this is one. I want you to just take in the elements in this frame. And you can see a corpse burner. He's running between two pyres. And he has no protective paraphernalia. All he has is this red gamcha to protect himself from the intense heat. And the ground below is extremely hot. And it's not visible in this particular photograph, but there is thick, vicious smoke that is very much there at Manikarnika Ghat, which settles deep within your lungs, and it gets very tough to breathe sometimes. In the background, you can see abandoned bamboo stretchers on which the corpses come. And they arrive on that. And in the foreground is the shroud, which I just spoke about a couple of moments ago. So just to give you an idea of the smoke, this is one alley that leads to Manikarnika Ghat, and it's filled with smoke. And you can see this man has been engulfed by it. It's extremely thick and very uncomfortable to be there. This is a man on a boat, and in the background there's Manikarnika Ghat. And the reason why I chose this photograph is it's believed that Shivji whispers the Tarak mantra or the ferryboat mantra into the ear of the deceased so that the soul can finally go with Shivji from the riverbank towards heaven. That is the local belief. Oh, sorry. Tech support or anyone else here? It's a bit tough. Is that better? Little more? Can you see it now? Maybe you can just move that side, please. Thank you so much. Sorry about that. Okay, so this particular image has, as you can see, the boats are filled with firewood. And that's one of the striking features of Manikarnika Ghat. When you visit it, you'll see columns and columns of firewood and also boats stacked with logs of wood. And this just goes to show the sheer number of bodies that are cremated at Manikarnika Ghat. So while I was reporting, I had the opportunity to speak to many dome corpse burners. And the thing is that because they are working in such hostile environment that they are very exhausted by the work they do. And many of them die at a very young age. And to cope with the kind of environment they're working in, they start consuming drugs, having alcohol. And so one of the dome men who I spoke to, he told me that they've seen all sorts of bodies, corpses with smashed skulls, severed limbs, gunshot wounds, and knife-torn torsos. And Akash Chaudhary, who's another corpse burner, he said, we have to see and smell such terrible things that we feel sick to our stomachs. Alcohol makes things bearable. At least our breath smells of liquor and not of a decaying corpse. So what about the children? Here there are a couple of young children playing at a wood shop at Harish Chandra Ghat, and you can see that they are left to their own devices. Instead of being at school or under the supervision of their parents, they are here. And at a very young age, around the age of 5 or 6 years old, the boys from the Dome community are expected to go to Manikarnika Ghat and work there. And what they do is they pick the shrouds that I mentioned earlier. This is Kavi Chaudhary. He was 13 years old when I took this image. And he was working at Manikarnika Ghat late into the night. This is at 10 o'clock, of course. And instead of being at the comfort of his home, in his bed, he is working here to make a living. So what happens is with the shrouds, that they pick these abandoned shrouds and then they sell it to shopkeepers. And the shopkeepers then wash it, iron it, and package it, and sell it to grieving customers. So what about the women? So the girls go to schools, but they're pulled out at a very young age. And then they get married around the age of 17, 18. When they get married, the women have these symbols that are tattooed on their forearms. One is a symbol of a sun, and one is a crescent moon. And these are indicators of marriage. They also have the name of their husband tattooed on their forearms. And I've, of course, concealed the name here to protect the identity. But the men, of course, don't get any tattoo done when they get married. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. I was talking about this particular photograph. If you can all see. Should I read this out, or if everyone has got it? Okay, great. This particular image is about, it shows a woman who is draped in something called a chadar, which is a net-like fabric. And every time they step out of their neighborhood, the women are supposed to drape it around themselves to, well, they just are supposed to do it. They have to follow tradition. And here their face is, their features are hidden. And by extension, it obscures their identity. And the women, when they step out, they always have to be accompanied by their husband or a male chaperone. So when I spoke to the women, when they step out at public spaces, I asked them, how do you feel about it? One of them told me, we don't like it. We go out and we put on so much makeup, and all that is hidden under the ugly chadar. So I'm going to end here, and I'm going to invite Manoj to speak to me, and we'll go into greater detail. But since we are all lovers of literature, I wanted to end this presentation with a photograph of a bookstore in Benares. Thank you.
Can everyone see us and hear us? So, that I think that's a very, very interesting presentation, particularly for someone who's not familiar with the subject, to break them into it. But what is it that first piqued your interest into the domes of Benares?
So this began as a student project. I was studying, I was doing my master's in journalism, and we were encouraged to work on a thesis. And I had a couple of ideas in my mind, but one day I came across an article about the Dome community, and it suddenly I was quite intrigued by it because I'd never heard of this community. Right. I didn't know that there was a community that existed that specialized in cremating, which was highly caste bound. And so I decided to dig a little deeper, and all the information that I was able to get and gather, it was all related to their work at the cremation ground. There was nothing beyond that. And I wanted to know more about their lives, about why, how the men are there and they work at Manikarnika Ghat, and how it affects them psychologically, going over there every day and cremating corpses for a pitiable amount of money. I wanted to know about the children, how they spend their days. Are they receiving education? Is the school even helping them become capable adults? How is the internet affecting them, like shaping their thoughts? And about the women, whether they had reproductive freedom, whether they had the ability to take part in family discussions and decisions, whether they were allowed to step out of their homes and earn. So these were the questions that were really occupying my mind, and that's how I decided to work on it.
And that's very interesting, but it's not plagiarism when you quote something back to the author, right? It's not plagiarism.
No.
So, these are some lines from your book, Radhika. And so on page 158, one of the characters in the book, Golu, asks you, the first time you came here, do you remember how you couldn't bear the heat? You vomited and almost fainted. Right? How did the interest how was the interest sustained when you had such a difficult start to the project?
Yes, I think the first few times I went there, I remember it was very, very uncomfortable for me. There were thoughts in my mind where I asked myself, what am I doing here? Should I even follow through with this? And but I think it was also when I started reporting and I started to speak to the members of the community, I felt there was a connection first of all, and then I also felt that this needed to be written about. Their stories, their lives needed to be written about. They needed to be documented. And if they are spending time with me and they're giving me their time of day and telling me about everything that is that they experience on a day-to-day basis, then I should follow through. So that was the only reason I kept going back.
So, Masan is probably the only film that I know of. Can everyone hear this? So this is from a very sensitively made film called Masan, and this is a very, very popular song. Uh, and this is probably the only film, Radhika, that I have seen that deals with this subject. And you mention Vicky Kaushal in your credits. Did this film have anything to do with inspiring you to research the subject?
So, interestingly, you mentioned Masan, and in for the masses, this is their first and only source of information to do with the Dome community. Unfortunately, of course, there's academic literature, but I'm talking about the public. This was their first introduction, also, I feel, to the Dome community. But Masan is one film that is based on fiction. It's a fictional story, and interestingly, when I was doing my reporting and I was spending time with the children over there, I invited them to the guest house once, and we sat down and we watched Masan because I wanted to. First of all, it would be a fun session. I think just watching the film together, but I wanted to understand what they think about it, and they said this is not our story. You know, it's a great film, but this is not our lives. So this is they completely they
Distance themselves from it?
yes they couldn't connect to it, but strangely enough, now in hindsight, because Bhola at that time told me, and Bhola is one of the individuals protagonists in my book. He told me that they're showing this man from the Dome community who studies, and he's able to get out of the community and do something else apart from burning corpses. And this is all a lie. This never happens. But in hindsight, now
No,
many years
we'll
later,
come to,
yes,
we
okay,
will come
sorry.
to Bhola in just a bit. Uh, one related question to this film on Masan, and you mentioned there isn't anything about the Dome community other than in, say, academic writing. Why do you think it's been missed out altogether from popular folklore? There's, for instance, the boatmen who take you across the Ganges. They've been depicted in so much writing. There's so much films, in cinema. How come this aspect, other than, the only film, if people here have some knowledge, we'd be happy to hear it, because the only film where I've seen the domes working closely has been a black and white film made many decades ago called Raja Harishchandra. So, why do you think this whole thing has been missed out?
There is, of course, Sumit Samus. He wrote a memoir
Right.
on his own community, and he's a Dome, but he's in Odisha, and from Benares. I honestly, the thing is with the Dome community, many of them are illiterate, and they are battling their own day-to-day lives, and they haven't had the opportunity to really pull themselves out of the community. Because, like I mentioned earlier, that this is a very caste-bound profession. So many of them don't have opportunities to alternative professions. And Bhola is the only one, and we'll come to that, but he's the one who's managed to, through education, pull himself out of the basti, and he's now working in another city. But yes, they're battling their own lives every day, the struggles that they face. So they have other things to think about.
And in your book, it comes through very, very clearly that the community is completely both insular and insulated, right? And the first intercaste marriage that has occurred in recent history or known history is that of Komal and Laksha, right? And it's perhaps portends a new beginning in many, many ways. Will you introduce the characters to the audience and how it came about?
Sure. So Lakshay is this very interesting fellow. He's good looking, and he walks with a swag, and he thinks of himself as a Bollywood hero. So he'll run his fingers through his hair, and he has one little bali here and wears these tight hugging jeans and tight t-shirts, and he's into bodybuilding, all of that. And he's a Dome. And he falls in love with Komal, who's a Brahmin girl, and she lives with her family. Well, when we meet them in the book, she is living with her family in a Yadav Basti, which is adjacent to the Dome Basti. And they fall in love, and they have a relationship, but they keep it a secret But eventually, people find out about their relationship, and all hell breaks loose. And there is a point where things get so bad that Komal is humiliated, she's discredited, she's called all sorts of names by her Yadav neighbors. And Lakshay, of course, is called in by the cops, he's interrogated. Things just get out of hand. And there comes a point where Lakshay tells Komal that, pack your belongings and you leave the neighborhood because things are getting very murky. They're getting out of hand. And Komal is just very, very heartbroken because she doesn't know whether this is the end of their relationship or not. And then the story I track their stories to see whether they are able to really, keep their relationship intact, whether their love survives or whether it falls apart. So, but then, of course, as you mentioned, that they do get married towards the end of the book, and when whoever is interested reads the book, you'll learn more about them.
So, Komal's mother didn't end up attending the marriage for reasons that she feared that her family would ostracize her, right? Though she was fully supportive of the marriage. So, we fully get that. But did you attend the wedding?
Yes, of course I did. Of
And,
course.
and how was it? Why don't you share what the wedding was like?
Oh, it was an absolute celebration of love, and I think both Komal and Lakshay didn't think that they'd be able to get married, but they did. And there was a lot of dancing, there was a lot of good food. But coming back to Komal's mother and why she was not part of the wedding, because Komal's mother didn't attend the wedding, and barring a couple of her friends, nobody else from her family, and her brother, of course, brother was also there, but nobody else from the family attended, not her distant relatives, nobody. And Komal's mother didn't attend either because the mother said that though I am happy about your relationship and your wedding, I feel that my own family will sever ties and not be willing to take me back because they'll feel that I have allowed this marriage to happen. And so she wanted to hide the fact that she's allowed this marriage to happen. So she just didn't participate in the ceremony or even show her face over there.
And another person who was able to break barriers there and do something absolutely unique and trend-setting is Dolly, right? And with Dolly, she turns entrepreneur, and she does it under extremely adverse circumstances post her husband's demise. So how was her struggle? You saw that very, very closely, the entire transformation of Dolly from being a subjugated wife to coming into her own.
Yes, so Dolly is another individual whose story I track. And she is, when we meet her in the book, she's this young mother in her 30s, and she is the mother of 5 children. She's a young widow, and she's the only one from the community who opens a shop, a little kirana store right at the threshold of her one-room home. And when she does so, the community is not very happy about it because women are not expected to earn or make a living. And so Dolly poses, in one sense, a threat to the community because when she opens this shop to support her children so that she can make a living, the community feels that she is transgressing in one sense. And but there is a point when and Dolly told me this, that there was a time when she had stepped out of her house to procure items for her shop, which is a kirana store, so a couple of chips, biscuits, all of those things. She'd left her home, and she had given her children, she'd put them in the care of her sister-in-law. And when she returned home, somebody had thrown cow dung into her home from the window. And that was a sure shot sign that people were not happy and they were very resentful. And she still took it in her stride. And despite all of that, despite the backlash she continued to face, she became this very astute businesswoman. So that transformation, that when she loses a husband, when he passes away, she's quite naive, she's very trusting. And then she becomes this very no nonsense woman over a period of time. So that transformation is something which is very, very important and shows her resilience as a strong woman.
But coming to her transformation from being a subjugated wife of Sikandlal's to an entrepreneur in her own right, and having faced and braved all the opposition that she did, including the cow dung being spread all over the home or her shop. How is it that the patriarchy doesn't change for her? Because the moment she gets her cell phone, her young son, who is dependent on her financially and in every other way, takes it away from her, because women in the community are not allowed to keep cell phones. So don't you find that aberrative and in a way retrograde?
Yeah, but patriarchy. So this is a very conservative and patriarchal community. So women are not allowed to have cell phones, and they don't have any kind of reproductive freedom. When I was speaking to the women over there, I remember Twinkle, who is the wife of a corpse burner. She said our husbands, वो हमें मानते भी हैं और मारते भी हैं. They worship us and they hit us as well. And so there is that degree of domestic violence. There is that degree of where the women are expected to. One of the women told me that as long as our husbands are providing for us, our husbands expect us to have as many children as they would like. The men and the in-laws get to decide. The woman doesn't get to decide how many children she can have. So, this is so, I think, widespread in our country. This is not only specific to this community or the city of Benares. It happens almost everywhere. That in conservative households and conservative patriarchal households.
One or two more characters, and then we'll open the floor for questions. So there's this other character, corpse burner Bunty, who's featured in your book, and Bunty has this huge sense of pride in what it is that he's doing. And if I may quote again, Bunty says, and this is very, very important to hear, we may have a small, insignificant life, but God has sent us to do His work, to give mukti to others. And at one level, he is very, very proud of this aspect of his role, and at another level, he is continuously cursing his luck and the life that he has. So how does the twain meet? How do you reconcile both of these?
So, as you rightly said, that the domes do consider the fact that because they're providing moksha or mukti to the soul, this is their duty. That God has sent them to give liberation to the soul of the deceased, and this is their belief. And there's immense pride also in that fact. So I remember when I was reporting, I had a camera around my neck and I was speaking to one of the dome men, and he pointed at my camera and he said, we might be able to use your camera, we'll figure it out, we'll know how to work it, but you will never be willing and be able to come to the cremation ground and do the kind of work we are doing and handle the dead bodies. And so there is this pride also that they have that stamina to do something like this, and they're very possessive about it. So he also told me this is their birthright. to give moksha. So in that sense, they're trying to, in one sense, they're trying to justify their place in society, right? That because we can give moksha, we hold some religious and spiritual capital. Because otherwise, they're trying to validate their place in a society which otherwise humiliates them and belittles them and considers them to be untouchables. So yeah, in one sense, they're also circulating this narrative of oppression, because in reality, no privileged caste person will want to cremate a body.
So do you think the honors list, including the Dome Raja Jagdish Chowdhury in the Padma list, worked in favor of removing some of the barriers that the community was stuck with?
Well, well, I feel that to a certain degree, and this is something that his son Om Chaudhary also, when he went to receive the Padma Shri
It
on
was posthumous. It was,
yes,
yeah.
yes, on behalf of the Dome Raja who passed away in 2020. So Hari Om Chaudhary, his son, had said that finally the domes are getting some sort of recognition on a national platform. But I remember asking Twinkle, who's the wife of one of the corpse burners, I said, "What do you think about this?" She said, all that is very good. But at the end of the day, the vikas, the development is not taking place in our community. So while Varanasi is changing at a rapid pace, it's developing. A lot of money is being invested into the city for multiple projects. When it comes to the Dome community, this particular basti called Chand Ghat, there hasn't been much change in terms of any kind of development. There is there is water shortage. The people live over there in very, very cramped, small homes. And these are family members who are families who have 6 to 7 family members. And then of course, the government schemes are available, but many of them don't know how to access those government schemes, or they don't have the documents required to be able to access those government schemes. So even though there is a possibility for change, it's not happening, unfortunately.
And it's not all doom and gloom. From all the stories that you have brought out so evocatively and so wonderfully in your book, the one that inspires the most is Bhola's story. And I'd really, before I open it to the audience, I'd really like for you to tell us that story, because you followed it extremely closely from the start, from the time the documentary film was made by Vikram Mathur and Gray came into the picture. So if you share that, I'm sure it'll leave our audience enthused.
So Bhola is one of the protagonists in the book, and he is the only one from this Dome Basti who is able to pursue a higher education in another city. So he's managed to, when we meet him in the book, he is no longer living in the Dome Basti. He's studying in a college in Ludhiana. But over there, Bhola is hiding his caste, he's hiding his identity. He's not sharing the fact that he is the son of a corpse burner with any of his dominant caste classmates. And that is because every time he has revealed the fact that he is a dome, the dominant caste people have distanced themselves from him. So, and Bhola is someone who he'll always dress very sharply. He'll have his clothes ironed and his boots polished, and his mustache will be always contoured. So he's someone who's a very sharp man. And
Sounds like me.
yes. And he's learning English to the best of his capabilities.
So am I.
Yes. And yes, so, but the point that I'm trying to make is that he is trying to fit into this middle class universe. And I remember when I was in Benares, and he was still in school at that time, and we'd gone to a restaurant. And we'd ordered food, and there was paratha and aloo and all of that. And I watched Bhola. He picked up a knife and a fork, and he began cutting through the paratha with a knife, and then used a fork to put the paratha piece in his mouth. And I was looking at him, and I wondered why he hadn't torn the paratha with his hands and eaten it the traditional way. And so I asked him about it, and he said, very categorically, he told me that people here are privy, people at the restaurant are privy to a shared knowledge that when they are brought up from a very young age in a particular caste and class, they know how to sit in a public space, they know how to eat at a public space, they know how to drink. So he has never, his parents have never been to a restaurant, he's never been educated from that perspective. And so he's trying to learn it on his own and try to fit in a society that otherwise shuns him. So he's that kind of a person. He's very, very ambitious. He's very intelligent, and when he was growing up in Chandghat, the Dombasti, he used to tell his neighbors, who were his uncles and older men, that he's going to leave Chandghat one day, and through education he's going to study and he's going to make something of himself. And the people, his neighbors would just laugh at him, and they would just sit him down and say, you are the son of a corpse burner, and the son of a corpse burner can be nothing more than a cremator when he grows up. And so Bhola is like, he's pretty much saying, he tells them that he changed the storyline for himself. He changes the narrative. When he grows up, he becomes a person of, he's so much more, he's now in another city, he's working in a very good company. So anyway, this is Bhola's story.
Yeah, I wanted to read just these few lines from your book. Bhola's escape on a flight.
Okay. So this is the first time Bhola has taken a flight, and he's never been on a plane before. And so I'm just going to read a passage.
I don't think anyone from Chandghat has ever been on a plane before, right?
No,
So,
yes.
So he's.
Who would have thought that a boy from Chandghat, who had cried sitting near the Ganges while watching an eagle soar, would be flying one day too? He was giddy like a young boy. It was like a dream come true, Bhola admitted a few days later. My family doesn't know what the feeling is like, nor does anyone else in my community. Even I had never thought that I would fly in a plane one day.
It's it's such an encouraging note, and I'm really glad that you've captured the nuance so well, so sensitively, without being maudlin. And I'd be very, very happy to take some questions from the floor. Yes, sir, please.
You want a mic?
Hi. How hard it was for you to break the ice? Because as I already read the book, so they are very conservative in opening it up to how hard it was for you to break the ice.
So, thank you for that great question. It was very hard. The first few times I went to Manikarnika Ghat, and that's how I approached it. I approached the corpse burners, and the men over there they looked at me, they sized me up, and they were like, why are you interested in asking us these questions? Because I was very curious to learn about them. And so they weren't very open to having those
So
conversations with me.
was there some suspicion as well? Is that, is there a motive? Is there an agenda? Was there some of that as well, or?
No, I won't call it suspicion because that has a very negative connotation. They were very curious as to what my purpose was, because not many people would approach them and spend that kind of time with them. And I spent 8 years with them eventually. But people would just, journalists would come, they would speak to them for a day or two, and then they would disappear. And and then because I kept returning to Manikarnika Ghat, because initially, like I said, that they weren't interested in talking to me. And so when I kept returning to Manikarnika Ghat, they realized over a period of time that I was someone who was very serious about documenting their lives. And and they, when they weren't talking to me, I decided to just sit at Manikarnika Ghat with my notebook and see what everything was like, what was going on at Manikarnika Ghat. That was an opportunity for me also to see how the men interacted with each other, how they placed bodies on a pyre, and in the book, since you've read read the book, there is a scene where I've mentioned that when the pyre is crackling, the wood is crackling, the sound becomes like it. When you stare at the pyre long enough, the sound goes in the background, and it becomes this comforting hum, And that was something I could only do because I was observing and spending time over there. And then when it came to speaking to the women over there, they were also very curious. They would ask me questions, "Ki, kya ho raha hai? What are you writing on?" And I would say that I'm doing this book. And our conversations were very, very formal initially. They were very to the point. But over a period of time, when I was able to build a certain level of trust and understanding, where they felt secure enough and comfortable enough to talk to me, that's when they started opening up. And our conversations took a very lengthy route. They would go on for hours and hours. And
But did you turn evangelist for change at any point in time, or you stayed away from that aspect for fear of rubbing someone or the other the wrong way?
at the moment, I was just working as
You
a
were just-
journalist.
right,
Yes,
right,
I was
right.
just reporting on the community. That was
Right.
my priority.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I get that. Anyone else? Sir.
Hi, Radhika. So my question to you is, post the publication of the book, do you got the chance to meet with your protagonists? And what's their reaction to this?
So I haven't met them. I'm going to be going there now in February to meet them, because, and I'll tell. Well, the thing is that they've heard about the book. They know that I'm writing the book. They're very, very happy about it. Bhola, of course, is reading the book now. So yes, they are very, very happy that somebody has written about their lives. So.
Yeah, hi. This is Aditya Basya. I'm a media producer. So I'm primarily from the documentary background, now going into the fiction space with audiobooks. Now, thing is, we have this thing called non-fiction. We have this thing called fiction. So non-fiction is primarily documentary, and fiction is basically entertainment, right? So yours is a non-fiction novel. So what's the structure like? I mean, like, so it's based on true events, right? So you have actually put dialogues in the mouth of the characters. So how did you actually? I mean, I have not read it yet. So like.
So the dialogues there, I've conducted hours and hours of interviews, and I've transcribed them, and the dialogues come from there. So whatever they're talking in the book, whatever they're saying, it's from the interviews that I conducted.
So you have put it more like a story, more like a fictional story, but based on true events.
It's not fiction at all. It's based on their lives, and
Presented like a novel.
Yeah. Thank. Mike at the end, there, at the back. Yeah.
Hi, Radhika.
Hi.
I have a quick cue. You mentioned that the act of burning bodies on a daily basis is physically and mentally taxing on the DOM community. My question is, do we see similar trends in other communities and other professions which deal with undertaking, like undertakers or embalmers? Also, understanding the fact that abroad undertakers are also is a multi-generational occupation similar to the DOM community.
Are you asking me how it affects them mentally, like
I'm asking
mental
that,
health?
yeah, do you see similar trends of declining mental health in those communities as you see in the Dom community?
I unfortunately haven't reported on those other communities, so I can't talk about that. But about the Dome men specifically who are working at the cremation ground, yes, it deeply affects them psychologically. I mean, think about it. If you are going to the cremation ground and you are seeing these bodies come in every day and you're cremating, these dead bodies on a constant basis, and you're told that this is going to be your life, and you're earning close to nothing, right? You're earning 200, 250 rupees for each body you cremate. So, and watching the bodies, the cremation is such a grotesque sight. So, for instance, even the children, when they go to Manikarnika Ghat and they are expected to work over there, they are expected to pick these shrouds. They have nightmares working at the cremation ground. So, because they're seeing these hundreds and
No,
hundreds of corpses coming
you
in.
want to mention how Mohan tells you that he has to do nasha to cope with, Mohan in the book says he does nasha to cope with his nightmares and.
Yes. So the corpse burners, they consume a lot of drugs to cope with the circumstances, because even the sight of what they're doing and this very hostile work environment for them, to cope with it's very difficult. So someone like Mohan, who's a corpse burner, he will be he told me that if you don't do nasha, if you don't do drugs, you're not human anymore. So you have to do it, and they do it to. It's a way of mitigating the stress in their lives, to cope with the fatigue, to cope with hunger, to cope with the work pressure. So they don't do nasha as something for recreational purposes. They're doing it to survive. So, and yes, it affects them terribly.
Yeah. Last question, lady at the back, Radha. Oh, sorry.
Where
Okay,
are-
last two questions because Shobha Mudgal will be starting at 7. So,
She's saying we're sort of out of
oh,
time.
just last two questions. Quick. Radha, you can shout.
I was just going to ask you.
Sorry, can you repeat one
Yeah,
more time? I
sorry.
couldn't hear you earlier.
Manoj touched upon the idea of the whole, the work of the domes, the lives of the domes being largely, and you mentioned that, absent from our popular imagination, popular culture, even though the role of the dome is so important, so vital in the life of much of this country, right? Much of the community. I was going to ask you in any time, did you, since you spent so much time with them, did you come across any sort of their generated or self-generated, some sort of folklore, songs, something that brings their community together, something that identifies them? Because that's what India has. We have weavers' songs, we have potters, so they're all caste-based professions. I was just going to ask you that despite such a hard, visceral life, is there something that you encountered?
They do have songs. In fact, once in 3 years, there's a Devi that possesses one of the women from the Basti. And then when she's possessed, she goes around, in this very trance-like moment. And then the women gather around this particular Devi and they sing songs. And that is their way of welcoming the Devi. So I haven't had a chance to record all of that, but maybe in the future I'll do that.
Thank you. Absolutely the last question. Yeah. Give her a mic.
She has to sign books also.
I think I'll have a conversation with you later. Yeah? Okay.
We've run out of time. Big, big.
Thank you. Thanks.